In a quiet alley of Kolkata, tucked between the smell of old paper and rain-soaked stones, stood a small, warm bookstore called Chapter 1. It was owned by Ishan Rafiq, a man with eyes full of poetry and a heart full of unspoken love. He wasn't rich. He wasn't flashy. But he remembered every smile Alina ever gave him. She was his best friend since college. Wild, unpredictable, beautiful in ways that didn't need makeup. She'd lie on the bookstore floor with her legs in the air, reading, Neruda and laughing at the rain. But she never saw the way Ishan looked at her, because she was in love with Arav, a rich, handsome banker who promised her the world. The departure one rainy evening, as the bookstore smelled of chai and wet pages, Alina told Ishan, "I'm leaving. Arav got a job in Singapore. We're moving." Ishan smiled, held back everything he wanted to scream, and simply said, "I hope he gives you every chapter you deserve." She hugged him tight. He never hugged her back, and just like that, she was gone. 8 years later, the bookstore was older now. So was Ishan. But some things never changed. He still kept her favorite poetry book wrapped in a red ribbon behind the counter. He still made one extra cup of tea on stormy days, just in case she ever came back. Then one evening, just as the sky cracked open with thunder, she did. Alina, soaked, silent, alone. Her eyes were tired, her hands trembled, but she smiled when she saw him. "Ishan," she whispered, like his name had waited too long on her tongue. He didn't ask questions. He just brought her in, made tea, and said, "The storm brought you back." The secret. They sat for hours, talking, laughing a little, pausing a lot. Then she said it. "Arav, he left me. I was pregnant. He said he wasn't ready. I raised my daughter alone. She's 7 now. Her name is Noor. She loves books, just like you." Ishan didn't say a word. He just stared at her. All these years he had imagined their reunion. But never like this. "I was stupid, Ishan. I had gold in my hands, and I went looking for glitter. You were always the one. But I was blind." He smiled, but his eyes betrayed him. A glimmer of hope. She started visiting the bookstore every day, sometimes with Noor, who'd sit in the reading corner and draw pictures of a man and a woman holding hands. Alina started helping around, reorganizing shelves, adding plants, repainting old walls. Ishan found himself falling all over again, but something inside him held back. Maybe pride, maybe fear, or maybe he had built too many walls in her absence. The final confession, one evening, as dusk fell and Noor had fallen asleep in a beanbag, Alina walked up to Ishan, tears in her eyes, voice trembling. "I don't know what to call what we have now, but I know this. I want to grow old in this bookstore. With you, if you'll have me." Ishan walked to the shelf, pulled out the old poetry book wrapped in red ribbon. He opened it to the last page where a note was written, dated 8 years ago. "If you ever come back, and I'm still here, it means I waited." He handed it to her. Her tears spilled over. The new chapter. They didn't need a dramatic proposal, just a slow, steady rebuild of something purer than before. Noor started calling him Baba after a few months. The bookstore became a second home for people who needed healing, just like Ishan, just like Alina. The moral of the story. Some people love you silently, without expectations, without pride, without limits, and if life ever brings you back to them, you don't ask for forgiveness. You earn it. Because the kind of love that waits in silence is the kind that writes the most beautiful endings. 3 years later. The bookstore looked different now. Brighter walls, a children's reading corner painted with galaxies and fairy tales. The old wooden counter was still there, but beside it sat a little desk where Noor did her homework every afternoon. Ishan sat at his usual spot, reading an old poetry book while sipping strong, cardamom-laced tea. Across the room, Alina helped a young girl choose her first storybook. They weren't married. They never wore rings, but every night they walked home together, and every morning she kissed his forehead while he tied Noor's shoelaces. Love in silence. Their love wasn't loud. No flowers, no candlelight dinners, no dramatic declarations, but it lived in the smallest places, in how Alina always brewed his tea just a little too sweet, because that's how he liked it. In how Ishan kept her migraine pills beside the cash register so she'd never forget. In how Noor drew them holding hands and added a little heart above their heads. One day, while they were closing the shop, Noor asked innocently, "Are you and Ami ever going to get married?" Alina laughed awkwardly. Ishan paused. Then he knelt down beside her and said, "Noor, sometimes the best families don't need papers or ceremonies. Sometimes we just choose each other, every day. That's enough." Noor nodded. "Okay, can I still call you Baba forever?" Ishan smiled. "Always." A letter from the past one afternoon, while cleaning an old trunk in the bookstore's attic, Alina found a dusty envelope with her name on it. Inside was a letter, dated exactly 1 week after she had left 11 years ago. It read, "Dear Alina, if you ever read this, it means you came back. I don't know if I'll still love you the same way. I don't know if we'll ever be us again. But I do know this. You were my favorite part of every day you were in it. And even if we never speak again, I will always keep one light on, in case you ever need to find your way back. Ishan." She read the letter 5 times, then walked down to where he was counting change at the register. She hugged him from behind and whispered, "I wish I had read that sooner." He chuckled. "Would it have changed anything?" She shook her head. "No, but it would have helped me miss you softer. Time passes, but love stays." The years moved forward. Slowly, gently, Noor grew up, became a writer. Her first book was about a little girl who found her forever family in a bookstore. Alina started hosting reading circles for single mothers. Ishan published a poetry book under the pen name The Man Who Waited. It sold quietly but touched thousands. Their bookstore became a quiet legend in the city, not because of its size, but because people said, "You don't just buy books there. You find pieces of your heart you thought were gone." The last page one evening, many, many years later, Ishan sat by the window. His hair now white, his fingers a little shaky. Alina was resting, her head on his shoulder. Noor's kids were playing in the corner. He picked up his pen and wrote the final line in his journal. "I never married her, but I loved her every day, and in the end, that was enough." He closed the book, smiled, and let the chapter end. Final moral, key. Every love needs a wedding. Not every heartbreak ends in loneliness. Sometimes love finds its way back, quieter, wiser, and more beautiful than before. The ones who wait in silence often write the most lasting stories. Thank you for staying with this story. It's been a beautiful journey to tell. However, we've now reached the true end of Ishan and Alina's story. Their love has matured, their life has come full circle, and their quiet, unspoken bond has left a legacy that even time cannot erase. But since you asked for a next part, how about we explore something deeper, a spiritual continuation or a legacy chapter through Noor's point of view? Let's give this timeless love one final moment, through the eyes of the child who grew up watching it unfold. The bookstore after them, a legacy chapter told by Noor. Some people leave you stories instead of scars, narrated by Noor as an adult. I never knew what a perfect family looked like until I met Ishan. He wasn't my biological father. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to be my hero. He just showed up every single day, quietly, steadily, lovingly. He taught me how to love books, but more than that. He taught me how to love people who don't always say it out loud. Memory of a moment, one rainy night when I was about 10, I woke up scared from a thunderstorm. I ran to Ishan. He didn't say, "Don't be scared." He simply picked me up, wrapped a blanket around us and said, "The sky is just telling a loud story tonight. Let's listen together." That night, I fell asleep in his arms. That was the first time I called him Baba, and he cried, silently. The bookstore becomes mine. When I turned 25, Ishan gave me the keys to Chapter 1. He said, "This place gave me purpose. Now let it give you yours." He and Amy moved to a quiet village near the hills. They'd visit every month, drink tea, and sit quietly in the same old chairs. I never saw them fight. Never saw them try to prove their love. It just existed, strong, gentle, undeniable. Their final chapter years later they passed, only a few months apart. We buried them beside each other under a tree just outside the city, where the wind always whispered through the leaves. On their gravestone, I engraved a line from Baba's poetry. She returned, and that was the whole miracle. A new beginning. I still run the bookstore. Kids come in every day looking for adventure, and sometimes, just sometimes, couples sit by the poetry shelf, not speaking much, just holding hands. And I smile, because I've seen what love really looks like. It doesn't need music or flowers. It just needs presence. Final note from Noor. To anyone who's loved and lost, or loved and waited, know this. Love that's real may take time. It may even take pain. But when it arrives, it stays quietly, like a bookmark in your soul. And sometimes the story doesn't end with a kiss. It ends with peace. In a small town nestled between hills and forgotten train tracks, there lived a man named Ruhan. He was 31, a school teacher. The kind of man who gave his students extra lunch when they forgot theirs, and kept old love letters in the back of his drawer. He had loved Meher Aftab since he was 20. She was sunshine on monsoon days, talked too fast, dreamed too loud, and believed love should be fireworks, not soft glances. They were close once. She used to walk with him to school, talk about her future, share pieces of her heart, but she never saw how deeply he cared. He never told her. Why? Because he was sick, and he didn't want to ruin her life. The separation one day, Meher told him, "There's this guy, Ryan. He's in the army. He says he wants to marry me." Ruhan smiled, the way people smile when their chest is breaking. "He sounds brave," he said. She hugged him and whispered, "You'll always be my safest place." But she left. Married Ryan. Moved to another city. Posted honeymoon pictures on Instagram while Ruhan sat at his window, grading papers and trying not to look at them. The clock was ticking. Ruhan had stage 4 lymphoma. He had stopped treatment quietly, chose to spend his days teaching kids, watering his garden, and writing in a journal titled, "Things I Wanted to Say to Meher." He wrote in it every night. "Today, your favorite flower bloomed. I saw a movie you would have loved. I wonder if you still laugh in your sleep." The news breaks. 2 years later, Meher returned. Divorced, broken. Ryan had cheated, left her after she miscarried. She came back to her hometown, shattered, lost. And one day she saw him again, Ruhan, sitting in the school garden, weaker, paler, but still smiling at children chasing butterflies. "You look older," she said. "So do you," he smiled. They started talking again, coffee in silence, evening walks, no big confessions, just comfort. She never asked why he looked so tired. He never told her. the goodbye that never happened one. Morning, she went to the school. But he wasn't there. The next day, too, and the next. Until the principal told her, "He passed in his sleep last night, peacefully." Meher fell to her knees. She hadn't even said goodbye. She hadn't told him that she had fallen in love again, with him. The journal at the funeral, an old man handed her a package. It was the journal. Things I wanted to say to Meher. She opened it and read, "You never knew, but I loved you when you were with him. I loved you when you forgot me. And I loved you even when I knew I wouldn't stay long enough to be loved back. I just wanted you to be happy, even if it broke me." The last page read, "If you ever read this, I hope you find someone who stays, the way I always wanted to." After the storm mayor now teaches at that same school, every morning she waters his garden. Every afternoon she reads from his journal to the children, disguised as fiction. And every night she writes in her own notebook, things I wish I told Ruhan. Moral of the story, some people love us quietly. They leave no scars, only warmth. And when they're gone, we realize they were the loudest love we ever knew. A new chance at love. In the weeks following her unexpected meeting with Imran, Meher found herself reflecting on what he had said. He had been right. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about understanding. She began to see things she had never seen before, especially about herself. She wasn't broken. She wasn't damaged. She was simply human, capable of growth, capable of love again. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized something. Ruhan had never been a man to hold grudges. If he had seen the love she had for him but couldn't express, he would have understood. He would have forgiven her. And that realization brought an unexpected peace, a peace she had long been running from. The letter she never sent won. Evening, under the soft glow of the evening sun, Meher sat down with the letter she had written months ago, the one she had never finished. She looked at it again, remembering all the emotions she had poured into those words. She smiled softly and, for the first time, allowed herself to let go of the regret. She didn't need to finish the letter because the truth was clear now. Ruhan's love for her was never about holding her to the past. It was about letting her grow, even without him. She folded the letter one last time, placed it in an envelope, and wrote a single line on the outside. "To the man who loved me quietly." And then she let it go. The final goodbye. A few days later, as Meher stood beside the garden where Ruhan's tulips still bloomed, she whispered her final goodbye. The wind rustled the leaves, and for a moment, it felt as though Ruhan was there, sitting beside her, smiling, understanding, forgiving. "I'm sorry, Ruhan. I'm sorry I never told you. But I loved you too. And I always will. I'll carry you with me in everything I do. You'll always be a part of my heart." And with that, she walked away from the past. Not because she had forgotten it, but because it no longer defined her. A new journey as time passed. Meher continued to work at the school, teaching children to appreciate life, literature, and love in all its forms. She poured her heart into the garden Ruhan had lovingly tended to, planting new flowers, ones that reflected the new hope and love she had cultivated for herself. Then, one warm autumn afternoon, Imran returned to town. They had been in touch, and he had become a steady part of her life again. Not as a replacement, but as someone who understood the complexities of the heart. Over time, their friendship deepened, and slowly, naturally, a different kind of love blossomed, a love built on trust, shared healing, and mutual respect. Meher finally allowed herself to open her heart to someone else, someone who didn't demand perfection but saw her for the woman she had become, scars and all. The final moment years later, after Meher had built a life for herself, she returned to the school with Imran by her side. She was no longer the girl who had fled her past. She had embraced it. The garden was still there, as beautiful as ever, and the children who played among the flowers were a reminder that life, much like the seasons, kept moving forward. Imran took her hand, and for the first time in years, Meher smiled genuinely, knowing that the future, just like the garden, had endless possibilities. "You're not Ruhan, you know," she said to Imran one evening, "but you've taught me that love isn't about replacing someone. It's about finding the courage to open up again." Imran kissed her forehead softly. "And you've taught me that love is not a race. It's a journey." The moral sum. Loves are never meant to be forever, but they all leave something behind, a lesson, a gift, a memory. And it's in those gifts that we find the courage to love again. End of story. She never knew he was dying, until it was too late. This story comes to a close with Meher healing, understanding, and finding the strength to love once again, not in the way she had once imagined, but in a new and profound way. Her journey is a reminder that while some losses are hard to bear, they can also be the seeds from which new beginnings sprout.